Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. Today, we're going to talk about securing our data from malware with Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Danny, and I'm here with Iska. Iska, how are you today?
Good, thank you. I'm very excited to be here this morning.
So Iska is a cloud solutions architect here at NetApp with a specialization in AWS and Amazon. And I am a product specialist also here at NetApp. Let's plow on. Now that we've introduced ourselves, we'd like to know a little bit about you. So we'll start with a poll to understand what is your main concern when it comes to data security, and many concerns in that field. What do you think our audience are most concerned about?
I would guess a lot of people are concerned nowadays about malware, ransomware attacks. I know it's a lot in the news.
Yeah.
We hear a lot about it. But another issue would be maybe lack of visibility. That's always a worrying factor if you don't know what's happening in your environment.
Yeah, a lot of that. Sometimes you find out about a breach 3 months or even 6 months after it took place. So that's quite a concern. And we all had our friends and acquaintances who were bitten by ransomware attacks. Eliat, do we have the results? There we go. So a great majority indeed are afraid of, are indeed concerned and maybe even afraid of malware or ransomware attacks. So it's a good thing that we are going to address this very painful issue today. And let's continue. All right. So first of all, I'd like to go about the 7 layer of cybersecurity. It's a comprehensive approach to protecting data, almost an industry standard nowadays, not necessarily in the tech field and other fields as well. Everybody's in tech these days. Um, so let's start. So essentially, what is sought after? I got a good pointer here from my producer. I forgot to talk about housekeeping. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A part of this webinar to send your questions. Iska and I will try to answer your questions during the presentation. If we don't get around to it, we will have a Q&A, a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we will discuss any unanswered questions or maybe bring up interesting questions that might be shared with the audience. So feel free to post your questions in the Q&A thread. And back to the 7 layer of security, of cybersecurity. So the first thing that organizations have to take care of is human security. The people, we need to vet the people working for us, do background checks, HR interviews, etc., to make sure that we are hiring trustworthy individuals. The next one, of course, is perimeter security, making sure that our physical premises are secured. It comes from having, if it's a guard at the entrance of the building, having to have pictured IDs when we enter the premises. No tailgating, of course. Also a major part of the security. Network security. Many people are still remote workers working from abroad if it's at home after hours from shared workspaces, coffee shops, etc. That's why we need to have network security against men in the middle attack or any other things, encryption at transit, making sure that our network itself is secured. And if we talked about working remotely or from the office, it doesn't matter. We need to make sure that the workstation we work from is protected as well. And here comes endpoint security. That means that our corporate laptops must be secured and protected. We all have our company designated security VPN, antivirus, etc., that have the tendency to pop out just at the right time to obstruct our work. But it is very important, jokes aside, it is very important to make sure that even our endpoint is secure from malware and is not, and this vulnerability is not taking advantage of. App security. We all, many of us are producing apps, using apps. Everything we do centers around code. So the developers must make sure that the code itself is secure, that there are no vulnerabilities, no plain passwords and plain text inside, all these classical mistake. The code itself needs to be secure. And last but not least is data. At the end of the day, what malicious actors, what hijackers and ransomware want is our data. Why? Because it is the most valuable part, so they might want to hijack it for ransom, not that they care about the data itself, but more because it is important to us, so they want to ransom it for lots of money. Or alternatively, what they could try to do is get our data and try to maybe get PII of our customers. That's why today we have many different regulations about data protection. So essentially, the data is the most important and most vulnerable part of our assets, and therefore, where the data itself resides is a very important layer. It is the last line. Protecting the data layer is the last line of defense.
Danny, I can't help but notice that you promised us 7 layers of security, and I think, if I counted correctly, you mentioned 6.
Well spotted, Iska. First thing that people who deal with cybersecurity must be is vigilant, and I'm glad that you were very observant and noticed that I only mentioned 6 layers. And the 7th layer, of course, is operational security, and that's the whole management of security, making sure that all the layers are working together correctly, harmoniously. Although there is separation, all is tied in together. If you have human security, it works with perimeter security. And so it goes with endpoint security. We need to make sure that our passwords are corrected. That's part of operational security, setting the policies that you need to have a password that is changed every 3 months, etc. That all ties in under operational security, which I did not mention. So well spotted. And let's go on. Since we are talking about AWS and about cybersecurity, we must talk about the shared responsibility model. The shared responsibility model is the model that AWS presents when we are building our applications on the AWS cloud and who is responsible for what. So to summarize, AWS is responsible for securing the cloud, meaning that the software, the compute, the storage, the networking, the hardware, the availability zone, the data centers, that they are secure. That's AWS's responsibility. That all the services that they handle are up to date. For example, if we're talking about FSx for ONTAP, it is AWS's responsibility to update the software. So that's a good example. But it is we as the customers, as the user, also have responsibility. And that is responsibility for security in the cloud. And for that, AWS provides many different tools from IAM, security groups, application, etc. But we have our own responsibility. For example, we need to set correct rules on our security groups, for example. We need to give granular permissions to our different processes, services, and users with the IAM, etc.
It reminds me of a nice analogy I've heard once regarding security and how to use different tools is it's like buying the most expensive safe, with the top of the line lock and then using 1, 2, 3, 4 as your code. So that still wouldn't keep out, a lot of thieves.
I couldn't find a better analogy myself. Well done there. So yeah, essentially you can buy a state of the art safe, but if you put a poor combination, the most thick steel door or most elaborate lock will not help you if you're not using it according to best practices. And with that, after we've heard about the different approaches and how responsibility works in the cloud, let's talk a bit about the challenges that we have when we are trying to protect our storage layer regarding with any application that we might have. So first of all, there's data integrity. We want to ensure that the data has not been corrupted or tampered with. Second of all, we want access control. And I think access and control. On the one hand, we want the data to be available to whoever needs it, but we want to restrict access to the data, meaning only authorized personnel or applications can access the data, can read the data or write the data if they need to, on a need to know, on a need to access only. So we don't want to give writing privileges to those who only need to read the data, etc. This avoids malicious intent or human error, etc. And of course, we've got detection and response. I think none of us are naive. We know that we can put our security mechanisms. Some of them may fail, and it's not a question of if we're going to be attacked, but when we're going to be attacked. And sadly, sometimes the question is, it's not if we're going to be breached, but when. Therefore, we need to be ready to detect any malicious intent. And if we detect them, we need to mitigate efficiently and quickly. As I said earlier, sometimes organizations discover that they have been breached many months after the case. And last but not least, we all have many layers of security. Many different vendors will offer different security tools. I'm sure all are great. We want all our security measures to work in parallel, to work together, not to inhibit each other. And that's a very important aspect of protecting our data layer. And now, time for another poll. All right, so what additional tools and mechanism are you using to manage your data security in AWS? Are you using native services? Maybe in addition, you're using third-party security tools, any in-house or custom-built solutions, or God forbid, you don't have any formal solution in place. I hope this one stays on 0%.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope for the sake of our listeners. What do you think we'll have as the top leading tool?
I think a mix of two. I think AWS gives very good native security tools, but sometimes people prefer to work with their known vendors from the on-prem, etc. I don't know if this poll has you can have more than one. No, it's only a single choice. I think the reality is probably the top two. And do we have the results? Yeah, so we see a great. Yeah.
Absolutely, the top two.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that not many people have custom-built solutions or nothing in place. I'm not surprised about that. Essentially, most of us, unless we work in security, sometimes it's better to support to use vendors whose that's their main day job to secure solutions. And AWS, I think they have very good services. And unless you absolutely have to or are already used to it, third-party security tools are not always necessary. Once again, very use case dependent, but native AWS tools are great. Okay, let's continue. So today we're going to talk about Amazon FSx for NetApp ONTAP. What is that? Well, it's an AWS storage service. It is part of the AWS storage family. It is a managed AWS service. You use it from your console and you pay AWS at the end of the day. But why are we at NetApp talking about it? Because under the bonnet, you've got NetApp ONTAP, the storage operating system. And with that, we've got a comprehensive set of features that makes it a very worthwhile tool to store your data, from accessibility, supporting many protocols, resilience and protection, to support our SLAs and making sure that the data is always available. Data security, which is what we're going to talk about today, about the vast features, price and performance. On the one hand, can give you predictable performance. On the other hand, we don't want to tear a hole in your budget. And last but not least, data mobilities and copies, moving data about. As I've said, today we're going to talk about data security. So, how does FSx for ONTAP help us address the issues that we've talked about earlier? So first of all, we've got data integrity with lightweight point-in-time, read-only, immutable backups, both that can be kept both locally on our file system and remotely. We've got access control, meaning strict granular data segregation, allowing multiple tenants to be in one file system, in a single file system, and of course integrating our Active Directory, etc. We're going to talk about that. Detection and response, as we've said, we want to be prepared to a case where our other security measures fail for some reason. I don't know if somebody has been negligent with their password or whatever, human error. We want to be prepared. So we're going to talk about how FSx for ONTAP is giving us a very last line of defense. If everything else has been breached, how can we automatically detect and mitigate without compromising our data, or at least minimizing the damage as much as possible? And last but not least, as we've said, FSx for ONTAP is a storage service, not a security service per se. how does it work with our other security services? So we're going to learn about that as well. And let's start with data integrity. So you can't talk about NetApp ONTAP without talking about snapshots. What are snapshots? They're read-only point-in-time images of our volume data for a local backup and also be kept remotely on our AWS account. So first of all, some terminology. Data is stored on FSX for ONTAP on a logical storage unit called a volume. The data in the volume is stored in 4 kilobyte blocks, which help us with the snapshots. The snapshots are a pointer created and it points to the active data block. No data is copied. That means that the snapshot creation is instant and it initially does not take any space. Only when there are changes in the volume, then the snapshot start taking place, and only the difference between the snapshot and the volume. So they are very lightweight indeed.
So Danny, Snapshot sounds like a very powerful tool. We know that a lot of the NetApp features are based on this capability, on this technology. But I'm wondering what happens when other users, other people start deleting snapshots or tampering with them.
Okay, so it's a very good question. Snapshots, by definition, are read only and cannot be modified. That means that the regular quote unquote snapshots are read only. That means that if, for example, there's a ransomware that tries to encrypt everything, it cannot encrypt snapshots. Then you've asked a different important question is what happens if somebody tries to delete, whether by mistake or on purpose, snapshots. So there we have feature called storage immutability. Some of the NetApp users in the audience will know it as SnapLock. Basically, it prevents modification or deletion of data. It can be either of the data itself or backups. So when it comes to volumes, you can define a volume as worm, write once, read many. That's the acronym. The idea is that once you've written data, you can prevent modification or deletion of the data for a defined period of time. Once a file is written, it is locked and cannot be removed even by the strongest user with the utmost privileges. It cannot be deleted. Very powerful tool, has its dangers. We'll talk about that later. Snapshot volumes can also be immutable. So if the volume itself is not worm, you can make the snapshots immutable, meaning they cannot be deleted even by admins. What is it used for? So it is for complying with regulations. Financial sector, health sector are obligated by law to retain data. But we are all people. We all heard stories about users now of AI agents deleting databases, etc. If you have immutable snapshots, not even the strongest AI can delete them without permission. It is also a great protection against ransomware attack that try to encrypt or even delete our backups to hold us ransom. and as we've mentioned, preventing accidental or rogue deletion. That's also an important tool there. And to talk about access control, since we're talking about accidental deletion, another tool of accidental deletion is making sure that only the relevant people or users have access to our data on a need to access only. And to tell us about access control in FSX for ONTAP, I am leaving you in the very dedicated hands of Iska. Take it away, please.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you for that intro as well. And as you mentioned, and as we asked here in the beginning, one of the main security concerns is who can access our data? How can we control that? How can we limit it to the least amount possible following that least permissive principle? And what's great is FSX for ONTAP has built-in mechanisms for tenant isolation. So we're talking about segregating the data in different ways. So making sure a volume's data is accessible only to the relevant tenant. So the first level would be the volume level isolation. As you mentioned, volumes are the logical unit in which the data is stored, and it inherits its security settings from the SVM level, the storage VM level, which means the IP, the domain, the authentication, etc. So volume level isolation is basically used mainly on a tenant level, ensuring that each application, each user has access according to separate tenants. And then we have the SVM level isolation, which is a more stricter isolation, which means every volume that is separated into separate SVMs would have completely different IPs, authentication levels, right? It's complete isolation of the volumes.
Wait, so what I understand is that essentially you have virtual machines running in your file system.
Correct, but it's all on the file system level. In both levels, basically, these are built-in mechanisms within the same file system, which helps with additional, no need to provision anything
So
in addition.
as you and some of our veteran listeners might know, I come from the fintech background. So from what I understand is with a storage virtual machine, essentially you have a logical machine running on your file system, which is compliant to the, at least in the financial sector, I believe in other sectors as well, with the requirement to have a single tenant across all layers. So on the one hand, yes, it's on the same file system, but it has a strict segregation because it's a different virtual machine.
Absolutely, and it's one of the great advantages of having that within one file system, having that ability to create a very strict isolation in that way. That takes us to our next step, which is detection and response. So you mentioned before, Danny, that we're all aware that attackers are very likely to try and even sometimes likely to even manage to access our data, to breach our systems in some way. And we do our best and we put as many layers of security as we can and as many guardrails, but we are aware that the day may come and we want to, as Scar from The Lion King said, be prepared.
Always love the Disney quotes.
Exactly. So what we have in that area is autonomous ransomware protection, ARP in short, which is a detection and response on the volume level, allowing us to detect ransomware in real time and respond immediately in order to protect our data. So again, ARP is a detection level on the volume level to detect abnormal activity that may indicate a ransomware attack. The reason that it is situated in that level is nowadays a smart, for lack of a better term, attacker may try to skip accessing the data directly because of all those excellent guardrails that we put in place and the ability to isolate our data and to limit access as much as possible. It may be difficult for an attacker to come from that direction, and they may try to come from the application level.
And I'm sure we've all heard the stories or of a business user in our organizations or a friend who was, I don't know, used the same password twice. Somebody phished said user and used their credentials, which made all the other security measures think that it is a valid and legal activity. But essentially, he was the attacker ransomed or hijacked a legitimate business user's credentials.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it could be in that way. It could be, right, that's one example. It could be through an actual application, some sort of agent or anything else that may be open to the public, or just easier accessible to an attacker. That way, an attacker could try to leverage that to access the data through a valid application, right? So it's assuming that the volume will give it whatever it wants because it's coming from an authenticated source. So this is what ARP is coming to do, to say this may be a valid source, but it's not permissible behavior, right? We're looking at the actual behavior of the application as well as the authentication it has to make sure whatever is happening is considered acceptable. So it is looking at things like high data entropy, right? A creation of files in a large amount very quickly, or data encryption, right? Which is very abnormal. Assuming we have some sort of baseline established and we're comparing it to that, a sort of an extension that is not considered a normal extension type, right? All those kinds of things. And what will happen is ARP will detect that behavior and immediately create an immutable backup, like Danny explained before, allowing us to have a peace of mind. We know that our data is stored in an immutable. We have a local copy which cannot be deleted. It cannot be tampered with. We can later use it to access our data again and allow us to deal with the attack separately and not and not pay the ransom that they are requesting, because we know that we're safe from that. This is a built-in capability of FSX for ONTAP, right? So it's free. It comes within one of the capabilities of FSX for ONTAP.
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing capability, something that everyone would want. But how complicated is it to enable it?
So that's an excellent question, right? We want to be able to make sure that our tools are both useful, but also easy to turn on. And there are different ways of doing that through a CLI, AWS console. But what I'd like to do is use this opportunity to introduce to our listeners a handy tool called NetApp Workload Factory. Now, NetApp Workload Factory is a storage management platform developed and designed by NetApp expert to automate and optimize our services, our workloads throughout their lifecycle, through planning, provisioning, and operations of our workloads within FSX for ONTAP, for FSX for NetApp ONTAP. So basically, we're detecting here part of what Workload Factory is doing is, again, allowing us to automate and optimize these services and identify best practices that we can, areas where we can optimize, including the security area and different areas as well, reliability, cost optimizations. And I'd like to show a short demonstration of how ARP can be enabled through the Workload Factory. So we're looking now at the main dashboard, and from here we can drill into many different areas, but we'll try to focus today on ARP. We can drill down into our different file systems across all AWS regions, accounts, right? It's a consolidated view of our entire environment. We can see how we're doing on the different areas, as I mentioned, reliability, cost optimizations, etc. But we'll focus right now on the security aspect. We can filter by that area and see what kind of recommendations we have on the security area. And we see that we are not optimized for ARP because apparently it is not turned on for at least one of our volumes. We can see a short description and it's clickable. We have our remediation right here in place, just one click away. So we'll view which of our volumes in our environment do not have ARP enabled, and as simple as that click, we will turn it on. And the advantage of doing this through Workload Factory is, one, as I mentioned, we have a consolidated view across our entire environment, right? No need to toggle between AWS accounts and regions, and this enablement can be done either on the volume level in single or bulk action, or it can be done on the file system level. That way, promising that any additional volumes created will be enabled with that capability by default. So we're preventing here the manual errors of not creating this for additional volumes. We see here, just to finish off, that we've gone through the process successfully, and we are now optimized for ARP. So that's a handy tool there that we can use. And you may be wondering how easy it is to start out with Workload Factory. You should already have in the chat now a link to either start out with Workload Factory yourself or set up a meeting with one of our NetApp experts to take you through it. Very simple.
Yeah, so I have a few questions about this Workload Factory of yours. So first of all, maybe I'm a bit concerned how I'm not very keen on putting my credentials in a in a in a third-party tool. How intrusive is it? What credentials do I need to start?
So that's an absolutely legitimate concern or question. And Workload Factory works in a granular permission levels. You can start as simple as no credentials added. You can start by simply signing up with your email and start off with the planning tools of TCO calculators and seeing how you can create templates for deployment and things like that, even without any access to your environment. And you can start gradually adding your credentials using AWS IAM, secure authorization, giving resources permissions. You can start with read only if you're comfortable with that, just again for the planning to discover your entire environment and see how you can optimize your environment and add additional operational credentials as you get more comfortable with the tool.
Another thing, I'm sure that our listeners are very busy people. They have lots of things on their mind, lots of work to do. They have a budget, and I think the last thing they need right now is to go and open a PO to purchase another tool. How much does the Workload Factory cost?
Absolutely excellent question. It's great to say that this is a complementary tool. It's free of cost completely. So it's basically developed by NetApp to help you manage your FSX for ONTAP as a complementary tool. So moving on, we're talking about
Speaking of third-party tools.
exactly. A great transition to integrating with other third-party tools. As most of our listeners already use many services in the cloud, including FSX for NetApp ONTAP, which is a first-party tool hosted by AWS. So the advantage of that is that it has already very smooth integrations and seamless integrations with AWS native security tools. For example, file system security, right? We talked about access control, and we have additional tools in that area. So we have VPC security groups allowing us to isolate and limit network access. We've got, as we mentioned before, AWS IAM, allowing you to define who has permissions for what resources. So for the resource of FSX for ONTAP, who exactly has what permissions for that on a resource level. And we've got Active Directory integrated using AWS Directory Service for file level access.
So that means I can use my Active Directory to set up access and permit to inherit the access and permission from my SSO.
Exactly, absolutely. It's very seamlessly integrated into FSX for ONTAP. And when we talk about data encryption, we know that's also very important to keep our data encrypted, both at rest and in flight. So we have at rest encryption of data that is stored in the file system by AWS KMS. And we've got in-flight encryption between different file systems when data is being replicated or cached or things like that. Then malware protection. Again, we're talking about malware today. We want to make sure we are protected as much as possible wherever we can. So some additional capabilities in the FSX for ONTAP area is we've got F policy, which is a built-in tool notification service allowing us to both monitor and prevent unwanted operations. F policy can basically block specific operations like create, open, file, things like that from sources, unwanted sources. Also using integration with third-party tools. Then we've got the VS Scan, which allows us built-in integrations with well-known enterprise antivirus software.
So our on-premise ONTAP listeners should know these. So we've got vScan that integrate with your antivirus that you already have, and of course F policy that if you have any suspicious encryption attempts, it would block them. Once again, nice complementary tools to the others that we have mentioned earlier.
Exactly. If we've got tools going, we're already using them, we've already implemented them and or paying for them, we obviously want to leverage those existing tools. So it's nice to know that FSX for ONTAP has these seamless integrations. Okay, I think it's time to put all of the above together and see it in action. So we're gonna see all these or some of these useful capabilities, ARP in particular, using this real life example. So we've got George, our business user who likes clicking on suspicious links. Apparently, he hasn't gone through enough corporate security trainings, exactly, and he keeps on clicking on links he shouldn't be clicking on from suspicious emails. And then we've got Harris, the IT administrator at said corporation, who is in charge to make sure they have business continuity to protect the business CIF shares. And we're going to see how ARP helps. So our standards for this example is we want to make sure our CIF shares are protected by ARP. We want to see it being activated automatically and quickly after the attack. And we want to make sure the snapshots being created cannot be deleted. And see that the files are then restored. So Danny, take it away.
All right, so let's take a look at our demo. So what have we got here? All right, so first of all, we're here in Workload Factory, our nice complementary tool. And we go to the file system in question that we need to protect, assuming we haven't done it earlier. So it's only going to the thing, clicking on the clicking on opening the pop-up, enabling. And if we are in Disney quotes, here's one from Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. That means that we are enabling immutable snapshots. Once again, I encourage you after this webinar to go ahead and try it in your, in your sandboxes, in your sandbox account. But if you are using ARP or immutable snapshots or immutable volumes, if you're only trying it, please, please, please learn from my hard-learned lesson and make sure that the period is very short. I was for when I was building this very demo, I had to wait a few days until I could delete my file system from my Sandbox AWS account because AWS wouldn't let me delete an FSX with immutable snapshots.
Which I have to say is great.
Yeah, it's a great feature.
It works.
It's not.
Beware, because this feature actually works.
We talked earlier about the shared responsibility model. Yeah, so Amazon did their part. I was a bit silly, so don't do what I did. Be very, very careful with immutable snapshots, especially if you're putting a schedule. And with that, let's click apply. Now that we've got enable ransomware protection, we are going to George, our business user, who, as we said, like clicking on he just won $1,000 from ransomware.com. And he has this lovely, lovely business files. It would be a shame if something happened to this CIFS share with all these PDFs and keys and specific trainings in data security in PDF files. But oh no, he clicked the link, the suspicious link, and let's see what happens. Oh dear, everything, cloud tiering documentation and cloud cluster support, everything is being encrypted. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Let's see what happens in our file share. And we can see that the files are inaccessible and they have a suffix LCKD, locked. All the important documents are locked and encrypted. And if we want to get them, we can either pay the ransom, which is a very bad idea, or go to our snapshots. Now we've got some snapshots and some snapshots with a suffix ARP. And now if we do a volume snapshot delete, and we will try to delete these snapshots. Let's see what happens. And we will get an error that it's an illegal operation because they are locked by SnapLock, which is the NetApp name for the feature. Now we need to restore these files. So let's take a few files as an example. Let's take the SSH key, tiering documentation, etc. We'll go to the snapshot, and go and extract the files. Here, 1, 2, 3. Let's copy them and restore them to our folder. First, we'll copy them to the system. This might be harmful for your computer. I think it's a bit too late for that. Now we can restore them, and the business users can return and do business. Let's move them back to the folder. There we go. To make sure that we can remove the old ones, the locked ones, and we can go about our day. 1, 2, 3, and off to the bin you go. And that's it. So as we've seen, we were able to protect our CIFS shares. We were able to the CIFS share, the ARP was activated after the attack when noticing the unusual activity. The snapshots were not deleted and the business files were restored. But unfortunately for us, management got wind of this whoopsie, and they have asked poor Harris to prepare a full, thorough report about ransomware readiness and the organization. Let's see how NetApp Workload Factory can help with that. So NetApp Workload Factory has an AI assistant that has visibility to all of our data estate, meaning you can basically either ask it support questions, you can get it has the documentation as part of the knowledge base and access to our metadata, meaning it knows what Workload Factory knows. And let's see how Harris is going to use it to save lots of time. So basically, create a detailed report about our ransomware protection readiness, and we can also add make it full C level, etc. Basically, we have a thorough report with priorities, with things to do, where we're ready, where we're not ready, we can send to our bosses, or we can have actionable insights as to what actually we need to do to protect ourselves against ransomware. We can also get reports about many other things, whatever we want to ask, we can ask and get insightful answers from Ask Me. And with that,
Yeah,
I think we can conclude.
Definitely. I just wanted to mention regarding ARP, I think it's such a powerful tool as we saw now in the demonstration. And seeing as it is A, very easy to enable, and B, a built-in free tool, there's really no downside, or very, you'd have to convince me why not to,
exactly.
why not to turn it on.
Correct. So if you want to try it yourself, feel free to sign up here. If you want some guidance or someone to guide you through, ask more questions, get to the thick of it, then you can also ask to set a meeting. An expert will be very happy to lead you in your journey. And now we are in the Q&A session. Let's take a look at the question. I think we had some.
Section have been doing.
Okay, so someone already asked, Marco, are these different types of SnapLock? Essentially, yes, it is based on SnapLock, but it is ARP is sort of automatic SnapLock. You can the ARP section will identify that you have ransomware, and
there's another question.
Yeah.
NetApp World Workload Factory will help also to manage data stored on premise, helping to automatically move data to cloud ONTAP as secondary target or tiering. Absolutely. That is one of the many use cases of Workload Factory, helping to replicate data from on-premise to the cloud as either a secondary target, data disaster recovery site. Absolutely.
Yeah, you can use it. I guess you come from the Marco, you come from, you have NetApp experience. So yeah, basically you can set up SnapMirror relationships from Workload Factory. If you have connectivity to the on-prem and to the cloud, you can set it up from there and also track it and monitor it from there. And
there's a question about the snapshot in the demo.
How did I mount it as a SMB path for the demo? That's one of the magician doesn't tell his secret. I'm just kidding. Let's take a look at the documentation at time, or you find me on LinkedIn or something, or you can ask the question and the expert. They can give you a very good, thorough explanation.
Absolutely. If there's anyone who has one last question to post in the Q&A, you can do that in the next 5 seconds, or if not, obviously you can contact
forever hold your peace. Yeah, I'm just joking. You
can, as we mentioned, you have here in the chat a link both to try out Workload Factory or
there is a question. That's also a question for our expert. So how to integrate with OpenShift. OpenShift integration is available. I know there's a dedicated team at NetApp that works with that. Unfortunately, I'm not one of them.
We can definitely direct you in the right way. You are very welcome to reach out and we can direct you in the right direction.
Okay, and also in the chat, I believe Liat sent you some useful links about if you want to try Workload Factory yourself, if you want to schedule a one-on-one demo. A good example, if you want to, for example, talk about OpenShift or about mounting the snapshots on SMB, that's the place to do it.
Or replication from
exactly, replication from ONTAP. Yeah, exactly. The experts will be very, very happy to help you during the session. And once again, these are the advantages of a dedicated one-on-one demo session. And with that, I think we can say thank you. So first of all, thank you, Iska.
Thank you very much, Danny.
Thank
Great
you.
to be here today.
Very much. Thank you, Liat. And last but not least, thank you, the audience, for listening, for sending very insightful questions, for answering our polls and making this session more interactive and not just us talking to ourselves. So thank you very much for that. And we all look forward to see you in future webinars. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day.